second stream day in a row where it's actually been cool enough that I don't have to have my AC unit going, which is pretty nice actually. The fact that it's not deathly hot outside, it's quite nice for me. In fact, while I'm doing like the warm up, I usually bury the lead a little bit for like the main meat of the streams. I might as well take a look at the weather here for the next few days. Yeah, wow. For this week, up until like next week, up to Saturday, it's supposed to be like pretty temperate, at least considering that it's fucking August, right? Hey, Gotron, welcome back. Welcome back. I am gonna do some free roam content. I'm gonna do some React content. But first I want to, get my feet wet, get back in the pool a little bit, so to speak. And here, I'm gonna remove. Well, I still technically want to make this one thing into a segment. Okay. Let me take a look at the previous stream, just so I can see where I left off. Video producer, open that shit in a new tab. The slow approaching of the rich people's plan feels like the rumbling. Yeah, what do you mean, like with fucking Palantir ass surveillance type shit? Because yes. Okay, so I was at like Peach Stadium or thereabouts. Okay, so let's just go over here. We are basically living in the fucking panopticon, right? Like that's kind of what the internet has become rather. Let's change character here to somebody for whom I have not unlocked every single costume. So Toadette. That's good. That's good. Let's pick a nice car, automobile, a vehicle even. Bulldozer? I don't think I want to do that. Sure, I'll do the carpet flyer. Since last time I've been here, there's a new internet bill coming soon. Really? In America? I did not know about that. That's more recent than what I've seen, which is unfortunate. Let's change sticker here. Gold. Probably guess what it is. Is it like the same fucking shit as the UK bill? Here, hold on. USA Internet Censorship Bill. USA Internet Bill 2025 Congress. I can't see anything here aside from the Rural Broadband Protection Act of 2025. It's been, like, to the extent that the US actually cares about infrastructure, all of our infrastructure efforts centered around ruroids, right? Because it, like, for two reasons. First of all, like, America sucks ruroids' dick all the time, politically speaking. But then also rural areas are actually underdeveloped and need infrastructure investment. So broadband internet is like an easy W. Different place. Oh, the UK. You do you mean the like the UK and EU like pursuing internet ID legal requirements and shit like that? Because if so, then yeah, I have heard about that stuff. And it ain't good. It's probably good to spread. Yeah, it like people need to be fucking pissed about that because it's like the internet was supposed to be a new venue of like free exchange of information. And when I say free exchange of information, I don't mean it in the way that fascists always say it, which is I should get to lie for fun and peddle unlimited disinformation or some shit like that. No, it's meant to be a to a certain extent anonymous forum of basically like academics. You know, like that's what the internet used to be. It was researchers that would share work with each other, and the first thing that internet was used for, uh, uh, you know, including stuff like interpersonal communication, was actually sharing of academic pieces, research, and shit like that, library resources and that sort of stuff. Literally, it was like just a comprehensive online catalog of information, verified and vetted information. And then now it's the fucking disinfo panopticon. You know, in effect, the purpose of censoring the internet in such a way is to actually make it worse insofar as the veracity of information, to increase the amount of like marketing and corpo shit on the internet to sell you stuff. Imagine the T app put on a bigger scale. Yeah, see, the T app I don't like because it encourages antisocial tendencies of like paranoia, distrust, and whatever. Like, to say nothing of the fact that like it nominally, if you want to have like social venues for people to express you know cautions about abusive relationships and stuff, yeah, but like the T app is a gossip app where you can basically it's like 4chan but for women, and the 4chaners did not react well to that. And as grim as it is, there might legitimately not be much that we can do about that except be extremely annoying cunts about it. Like, even like, for shit's sake, I don't know if I told you guys this, but I remember my dad and I were outside one time. I think maybe I had just come home from work, or it was like we were about to go on a walk or something. And my dad looks up and he sees there's a drone flying over us. And I look at it and I give it a coy little wave, right? And then it flies off. And what we find out later is that other people in the neighborhood were talking about it. Apparently, my dad's on like a neighborhood email list, right? Those like people talk to each other and stuff. Apparently, the police were doing a quote unquote training exercise that involved them surveilling the fucking neighborhood with a drone. They were doing drone surveillance of the neighborhood. I was like, oh, great. I hate it here. I actually hate it here. You know? And then literally like the next time after that I went to the grocery store, there's one of those like camera PA systems where like there's a big lamppost with like 4 cameras attached to it. Oh, cool. Already only one more costume to go. And there's like a microphone. And they like the fucking PA system like spewed out an automated message like, attention, this is a security announcement. This area is under surveillance like this area is under video surveillance 24/7. It literally, like, the fucking grocery store parking lot, right? Like, we're at the grocery store and there's a fucking PA system telling us, by the way, we're always fucking watching you. It's like, can we not do this? Jesus Christ. And so I turned around and yelled at it to shut up. God, I hate it here, dude. Where am I headed? I'm headed towards Cooper Beach. That makes sense. It's some bleak shit, dude. Just Except that we're not living in better times trying to make it better. Yeah. Well, I mean, right now, the trouble is, like, this is advancing faster than the, like, grassroots organizing campaigns can keep up. Where it's like, you know, there's not even really any active, like, the discussions about how to fight back against surveillance like this have always been, like, pretty disconnected and disjointed and stuff. It just seems like the authoritarians are ahead of the curve on this one, and we're trying to keep up, you know? And, like, shit, there's not much you can do from an individual, personal, like, level when the entire force of the state is coalescing to, you know, contract with, like, Palantir and whatever, and like, take away all of your fucking privacy and free expression rights so they can sell you more shit online, right? Movement can be built off of vengeance. Yeah, that's probably true. You know, like, shit like this is not sustainable, right? Like, we know this, you know, that it's just a matter of how bad things get before such a system of surveillance starts to like break down, you know? The troubling thing is that, like, I don't know, I think there's some, in some way, there's a natural inclination for me to want good things to happen in my lifetime particularly, so, like, I get to be alive to see them. And it really looks like the good things aren't going to happen until well after I'm dead. You know, no matter how hard I try to make this shit happen, to make this shit better. Or at the very least, I'd be, like, retirement age before society meaningfully improves. Which is gonna suck, but I don't know. I guess maybe it makes some great stories to tell my grandkids or something. Assuming I have, like, kids, grandkids, you know how that goes. Yeah, no, of course. It's just, like, it's a rough pill to swallow. That doesn't mean I'm gonna be a pussy and, like, end it all or whatever, or just languish in my suffering. I don't intend to give up ever. It's just like, kind of don't like how much things are about to suck is what I'm expressing here. Happiness high score in a video game? That's probably a better way to view it than what I'm thinking about. Anyways, the one thing that I wanted to talk about that didn't necessitate React content before I get into the React content was you know how Zateo did, I don't know if you guys have seen Zateo's mock ad where they did, like, a pretend campaign ad for a centrist Democrat, like a hypothetical centrist Democrat that's trying to imitate the success of Zoran Mamdani by, like, trying to crimp this, like, or crimp, to replicate the style without any of the substance, you know? It was a really funny video. It was a good bit because of how spot on it was. And recently, it actually happened for real that a centrist Democrat is now running a campaign. Is now running, like, a centrist-ass campaign, but trying to make himself out to be the next Zoran Mamdani with none of the shit that, like, made Zoran Mamdani appealing, you know? He's got to inflate his ego if everyone's trying to copy him. Oh, yeah, I think he's got to know that, like, he's him. In fact, you know what? Maybe we will look at this ad. Here, hold on. Let's take a look at this political advertisement. I think I even quote tweeted this. I quote tweeted it with something like, yeah, sorry, we need young bucks, not young cucks. Or something like that. Let me prepare the overlay. You guys are going to be eating good with this React content. I'm going to highlight the timer, bring it down here, so that my webcam can be in the upper right. There we go. Is that good? Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. Okay. You get some of that. Then React Andy is going to be this. Right? Okay. Show the React Andy. Very good. You kind of can't see the whole video. Let me... Here, cheat code. Zoom out slightly. That's jank as hell. Never mind. The top of it's going to be a little bit cut off, but whatever. This is designed to be more so for, like, YouTube stuff. I'll just leave it like that, because I don't want to readjust the... Nah, you know what? It probably takes way more effort for me to just not do that. Okay, there we go. Whatever. Look. What I'm trying to say is, it's React content time. Let's look at the newest wave of cringe centrist Democrats. Starting with Liam Elkind. What do we got? You can't hear the desktop audio. That is my B. That is also very loud. Let me turn this down to -21.
The Democratic Party is dying. We're losing votes.
The last 8 members of Congress who have died, all of them are Democrats.
The suffocating gerontocracy.
Older incumbents should step aside.
Losing elections.
Why are Republicans doing a better job of electing young leaders?
Losing our democracy.
Democrats are not taking this issue seriously, but they need to.
And the leaders who got us here are refusing to retire, with devastating consequences.
Roe versus
So far, he has not actually said anything.
Wade is overruled.
Apart from establishment Dems being old. Which is true, for the most part. I mean, you know, with some exceptions being, you know, the likes of Richie Torres and John Fetterman, I don't think is particularly old. But, let's continue.
Wade is overruled.
In the last 5 months, 3 House Democrats passed away, allowing Trump's billionaire bill gutting health care and food stamps for millions of people to go through by 1 vote.
The motion is adopted.
The same people are
Okay, this
using
is...
the same old tactics, but they're losing. They're
Already, this is like pretty hollow compared to Zoran Mamdani's video. I think this guy is also in New York, right? Like, he's also running in New York City. He's running against Jerry Nadler, which comes up later in the video. But if you guys notice, look how short each shot is. Look how short each shot of him is, and how, like,
they're telling us to
the city is just a backdrop. Like, look at this. Let me play this past... since this newspaper clip, let me play a few seconds. We got some footage.
In the last 5 months, 3 House Democrats passed away, allowing Trump's billionaire bill gutting health care and food stamps for millions of people to go through by 1 vote.
The motion is adopted.
The same people are using the same old tactics, but they're losing.
See, look at...
Telling us to give them 10 more years in office, even as they say...
I'm not sure there's much we can do.
So, okay, I'll get to that in a bit, but, like... Do you see what I mean with how short each shot is and how little is happening with respect to the actual city, the actual community, right? Now, in some way, you could, if you wanted to be charitable, you could argue that for Mamdani, this made more sense because he was actually running for the mayor of New York City. But either way, Congress people actually still have to be involved in local politics. One of the weird quirks about the American system of federal government is that it is a constituency-based system, right? If you represent a certain district, you handle casework. You have to a certain extent, you actually matter insofar as local politics as well. Senator Mark Warner and Senator Tim Kaine, my 2 senators from the state of Virginia, as much as I fucking hate them, they are actually, like, more bought in on that angle of politics, where they view their role strictly as doing things for people in the state of Virginia, where they, you know, they do what's called casework, where somebody writes them a letter, they're having trouble with such and such, you know, public services or like means-tested program or whatever, right? It's a very neoliberal, like, bend on that. But for example, if there is a local project in a district of New York City where one of the Congress people serves, that requires funding for roads, for like, or for a new building, you know, a new apartment or something like that, or to what's the term, refit or like otherwise bring up to code an older building, then the congressperson for that district, the federal congressperson, does have some power and even like responsibility under the United States system, because that is their constituency, to actually weigh in there to do some like politicking, basically, you know, the kind of back behind the scenes wheeling and dealing. It's a more idealized version of that, but like, you know, they talk to some local developers and whatnot. Like Congress people even do this, you know. And the reason I mention that is because is to mention that Congress people are kind of supposed to have some kind of attachment, even though they are national politicians. They are supposed to have some kind of attachment under this system to the locale, to the community that they come from, that they are supposed to represent, you know. And I don't think any of that is present for the whole duration of this until one specific point, which I actually have a separate issue with. But, you know, we'll get to that when we get to that. Up to this point, it's not like, you know, there hasn't been really anybody else involved in the making of these ads. Does that make sense? Like with Zoran Mamdani's ads, he's walking around, he's talking to like local shopkeepers and stuff. He's walking around, people are recognizing him on the street. He's talking about like bus services. He's doing interviews with people on the subway. You know what I'm talking about? Whereas this guy, it seems like New York City's just like a backdrop to things that he could be saying anywhere because they're so non-specific. I don't know. Anyways.
We will have to wait.
This is actually like cringe editing. I could edit better than this. Sorry. You're not him, little bro. I also don't know what the context of this is from Jerry Nadler, but I don't particularly have any love for Jerry Nadler either. Except for the fact that I think he, like, Jerry Nadler has voted for some, like, he's less pro-Israel than a lot of other Congress people, which actually might be why he's catching heat here.
Really? I'm Liam Elkind. I'm a community organizer, Rhodes Scholar, and nonprofit CEO.
There it is. Nonprofit CEO, eh? Rhodes Scholar. Fucking tell me you're an establishment ghoul without saying I'm an establishment ghoul. Community organizer, and it's like 1 second of him with an old lady. Yeah, community organizer. But I'm also a Rhodes Scholar and a nonprofit CEO.
Nonprofit CEO.
Yeah, he didn't invest very heavily into his speaking skills.
I was born and raised in New York City and went to public school here. And when COVID hit, I didn't wait. I put my phone number on a flyer and started delivering food to seniors and others in need.
Invisible Hand CEO Liam
Invisible Hand. Okay, this is actually like beyond parody. Invisible Hands. He's a laissez-faire capitalist running on the Democratic ticket. And I know some people are like, well, you haven't let him finish. That's just the name of his organization. And, you know, they're doing good work here, delivering meals to people in New York City. Let's let the full ad play out.
10,000 volunteers
to shop for the city's most vulnerable.
More than 20,000 deliveries in New York City alone.
I need to turn around for this.
Thousands of volunteers stepped up to join me, delivering food to tens of thousands of people.
Liam helped thousands of seniors just like me.
If you called the government hotline and asked for help getting food, they said to call me. But people's lives shouldn't depend on...
There it is. That is, like, in a nutshell, that is problem number 2. Number 1, no substance. Number 2, this shit. The substance that you actually see, fucking, like, non-profit industrial complex bullshit, right? Let's play that back.
If you called the government hotline and asked for help getting food, they said to call me.
If you called the government and needed help getting food, they said to call me. This guy is like pro his nonprofit. I guarantee you that, like, or not even I guarantee you, what he's advocating for here is that nonprofits should be doing this work. It's literally like the Democrats' equivalent of when right-wingers say, just, you know, use charity for this shit. Forehead. You know, oh, don't invest in government services. Don't use the public sector, basically. Don't use like the infrastructure of city government and like local communities and the public to do any of this shit. No, we need to outsource it to the private sector. Even if it's nonprofit, that is still private. Private nonprofits are still private. That is not the fucking public sector. That is not the solution to any of this shit. For the same reason that charity isn't. But then also, on top of that, nonprofits are not always charities. They may have a large degree of overlap, but nonprofits increasingly are kind of getting subsumed into capital. You know, like nonprofits don't necessarily, there's no real legal requirement for like how strictly nonprofits have to adhere to a given mission that they say that they believe, right? In fact, a lot of nonprofits like internationally have gotten in trouble for like misallocating funds and for functionally kind of propping up arms of what the UN recognizes as like authoritarian like colonial power and shit like that. You know, particularly I could refer in this instance something I'm a relative expert on. I wrote my bachelor's thesis on this. Haiti. You know, the massive failures of rebuilding efforts and infrastructure funding in Haiti is that they didn't let the government do any of it. The UN and the fucking international community were obsessed with delegating all of these essential services. And when I say essential, I mean like food distribution. Exactly what this guy's talking about. Food, water, clothing, you know, cell phones, telecom, roads, infrastructure. All of that shit got outsourced to the private sector, and of course, because the private sector gets funded by donors and whatever, in a similar manner to how like capital firms like venture capital, whatever, gets funded by investors, right? They have to do things that play for the cameras, which means they are like the incentive structures that keep nonprofits afloat actually run contrary to fixing a dire material and socioeconomic situation long term. Right? So, you know, that means you keep handing out water bottles and water purification tablets instead of like, you know, giving the government money to, I don't know, set up better networks of like piping that aren't made out of lead and that can reliably bring water to people's taps. It means like putting up tents and like temporary shacks instead of giving money to the government to use for affordable housing construction, letting the public sector that does not have a profit motive build affordable housing that it can rent out for cheap or whatever, right? And that be like permanent housing, you know, because a lot of that shit isn't sexy insofar as it doesn't necessarily appeal to an American audience that would see it on TV. And it also kind of runs contrary to the interests of a lot of these donors, which if they have deep enough pockets, like the fucking Clintons, would also have like the same interests as capitalists, being to keep these countries open to foreign investment. In fact, that's a large version of what went wrong in Haiti. The line between nonprofit and for-profit corporation got increasingly blurred because of where the money was coming from, and it resulted in like basically disaster capitalism. Haiti had been struck by 1 million coups and 1,000,001 earthquakes. And all of the private firms and nonprofits went in and said, you know what, you need privatization. And Haiti has never recovered. Like, Haiti never stood a fucking chance. Because people like this, people like Liam Elkind and people of that ideology have been running the show internationally since the 1990s. And it has fucking destroyed the third world. Like, even worse than it already was. Which is a high bar to clear.
But people's lives shouldn't depend on one person picking up his phone.
Our leaders need to answer the call now, and they aren't.
So today, I'm respectfully asking my Congressman Jerry Nadler to consider retiring. I appreciate his 50 years in office. I grew up voting for him. But we need new leaders to meet this moment. Because we can't wait. We can't wait to actually fight Trump, end corruption, ban corporate PAC money, impose term limits, build more housing, and serve our neighbors in need. I'm Liam Elkind, and I'm running Neighbors in Build More Post Term PAC Money.
Here, hold on.
Ban corporate PAC.
This one also, ban corporate PAC money. This used to be a thing that like exclusively progressives said back in 2017-18. But now like it's actually like really easy to for like centrist Democrats to pick up on this, because it's actually like it is so easy to have like a leadership pack that's affiliated with the party, but not actually affiliated with any corporation directly. But it's like consultant money, and those consultants work with you know, like big corpos and shit. So like that's kind of a nothing pledge, kind of a red flag, honestly.
Impose term limits, build more housing, and serve our neighbors in need. I'm Liam Elkind, and I'm running for Congress because we can't wait.
The only thing that even remotely sounded good was build more housing, and I guarantee that this guy doesn't agree with like rent freezes and shit like that. You know, ask him about fucking Zoran Mamdani's platform, right? Even neolibs will support building more housing if it's like done by the private sector. That's one thing that you know, you notice when watching ads like this. One of the ways that they lack in substance is that they like, none of what they're saying actually differs that much from the status quo. They don't provide any critique, even in a way that's like narrativized for ad purposes, right? None of this challenges, fundamentally, none of this like differs from how things have been going the past 30 years. He's basically the same as all the other Democrats, all of the like mainstream Dems in Congress. He's just younger. That's it. Yeah, look, SDL even points out, when will you condemn AIPAC? I guarantee this guy's probably taking AIPAC money. Endorse Mamdani. Didn't know that, but yeah, he hasn't endorsed Mamdani. Endorse Medicare for All. Medicare for All is like the bar here. There's like a couple of like extremely basic things that any American politician that claims the mantle of progressive should be able to, with no sweat, not only like adhere to, but like advertise themselves on. And those are Medicare for All, the fact that like Gaza is a genocide, so like speaking to a more responsible use of United States power internationally, and like affordable housing through cracking down on like landlords and shit, which is a relevant subject for some other things I'm going to react to, but you know, none of that was present here, which means that this is designed to try to convince progressives that this guy is a progressive, but it's not designed to actually be progressive. It's designed to basically, you know, it's designed for him to go to somebody like AIPAC and be like, don't worry guys, I'm still on your side. Kebab again? Oh, let's see what's on this truck here. No. Give me that. Another kebab. All right. Yeah, it is nice that like every time we see some new shit, it's like, wow, okay. So reality doesn't have, in fact, have a left-leaning bias. Is there a Yoshi's place here anywhere? Or, oh, there'd probably be one like down here, right? If anywhere. Anyway, let me move on to the next React thing. I don't think I'm gonna make a video about that. But just to cue people in on, like, whenever you hear Dems talking about nonprofits, it's fundamentally born from the same, it's the same, like, opposition to the public sector that Republicans have. The Democrats just basically want nicer capitalism. And they view that as like, yeah, we can get nonprofits to do these things. But nonprofits, because of a number of different like incentive structures and overlaps with them and like for-profit corporations still both being private entities, fundamentally they like still lead to not the same severity of outcomes, but like outcomes in the same ballpark where underlying issues of like crumbling infrastructure, income inequality, and all that cannot be fixed with nonprofits, because again, it's just charity. Charity is not economics. that is not a viable model for the fucking American economy. Start going this way. Next thing I wanted to look at, I think I'm going to save the Mr. Beat video for last. Yeah, it's just they expect it to just work this time. It's like the one more lane, bro, trust me, type shit. Let's take a look at something that Mehdi Hasan did. Boom. Also on Twitter. So, you remember how I was talking about in that Mehdi Hasan segment that when Mehdi Hasan is debating against another public figure, like somebody who could be similarly dishonest, but that represents like a real institution with some real pull, real power, that has legit like actual consequences for them, when there's like a debate facilitator or moderator and they're up on a stage in front of an audience in like a more traditional media format. This is an example, actually, of what I was talking about, and I want to show this off because Mehdi Hasan, just every time he's on screen with one of these, he's absolutely killing it. This is Mick Mulvaney. This is from Head to Head. This is Al Jazeera. Yeah, Al Jazeera's Mehdi Hasan. Wait. Al Jazeera? I don't think he's with Al Jazeera anymore. Well, either way, it is... I think this is associated with Al Jazeera. It is a like debate panel kind of thing where it's a 1 versus 1. Usually Mehdi Hasan is here. Mick Mulvaney was the first Trump administration, I think, director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. In typical fashion of the right wing, they got people to run the CFPB that were anti-consumer. They got people to run the Department of Labor that were anti-labor. They got people to run the EPA that were anti-environmentalists, and so on. But this is a guy who used to be a government official and still has a lot of connections within the Republican Party, within the like establishment Republican coalition. Let's have a look at how Mehdi Hasan does him here. My guess is it's particularly damning very important people of both sides. If it was just about Trump, it would have come out. This is him and Mulvaney talking about the Epstein files.
Last year you said the Jeffrey Epstein scandal would have no political impact at all on Trump's election chances. And you were right about that. It didn't. But it's certainly impacting his presidency. It's divided the MAGA base. Many conservatives are furious with him and his administration.
He's already squirming. It's kind of crazy. I legitimately didn't expect this, because Mehdi Hasan has only said factual statements up until now. It's like, oh yeah, he campaigned on this, didn't impact his election chances. You were right about that. Honestly, he's not taking what I assume to be some rhetorical bait here.
No political impact at all on Trump's election chances. And you were right about that. It didn't. But it's certainly impacting his presidency. It's divided the MAGA base. Many conservatives are furious with him and his administration. Trump, of course, is a former close friend of Epstein's. They're furious at him for not releasing the Epstein files, as he promised he would. Is it because, as Elon Musk has said, Donald Trump is in the Epstein files?
No, absolutely not. He's in the files. A lot of people in the files. This is if there was something in the files that was particularly damning about Donald Trump, the files would have been released by the Biden administration.
Pure coke.
Not if it was damning about Bill Clinton as well. Not if it was damning about...
Can I please just... Okay, if it was really damning about Donald Trump, they would have released at least that part. My guess is, and I'm just going to guess, is that it's particularly damning of very important people on both sides of the political aisle, which is why Trump doesn't want to release it and why Biden didn't release it either. If it was just about Trump, it would have come out.
You were the chief of staff when Epstein...
Now, okay, yeah, it is important to recognize the context for the conversation here, what Mick Mulvaney is saying is correct. That like many powerful people are implicated in the Epstein files, which is why it hasn't been released up till now. But what he's doing here is using that as an excuse for Donald Trump's behavior with respect to these files, and basically like trying to outsource the blame to the Democrats for not releasing the Epstein files, right? Like that's what he's doing here. And as Mehdi Hasan points out, he was a high-ranking official in the Trump administration. I kind of forgot, but yeah, this guy was also Trump's chief of staff after he fired, I think it was John Kelly or somebody.
He died by suicide in prison. You were, yeah, we checked. Trump at the time,
listen to this.
You were the chief of staff when Epstein apparently died by suicide.
In 2019, this was in 2019.
Prison. You were. Yeah, we checked.
Right there. Mick Mulvaney tries to like be was I like feign ignorance, and Mehdi Hasan was like, no, you don't get to do that. We checked, you were. You know, you don't get to fucking do that. And these are like the real consequences that I was referring to. Because this guy has connections in like the world of the Republican Party, this is going to reverberate. This is going to, maybe not in a huge way, but like this keeps up the flame that everybody knows that like the political establishment, particularly the Republicans, are deeply connected to Jeffrey Epstein, right? And like this kind of shit that Mick Mulvaney does, was I chief of staff? Was I actually, you know, privy to this information? Did I actually have the power to do this and like didn't do something? I don't recall. That's how Republicans get away with this shit. They play dumb, they lie, and then the Democrats usually just never challenge them on it. When you have somebody that's like Mehdi Hasan here, even just doing some relatively basic fact checking, that like completely falls apart. And now this is the point where like Mick Mulvaney, I think it looks like, grows increasingly uncomfortable.
You were the chief of staff when Epstein apparently died by suicide in prison. You were. Yeah, we checked. Trump at the time baselessly suggested that Bill Clinton might have killed him, as he does.
Baselessly? Okay.
You think Bill Clinton might have killed him? Okay. Just checking.
He tested the waters there. He you know, Mehdi Hasan's like a baselessly, baseless suggestion. And then Mick Mulvaney is like, was it baseless? Trying to appeal to conspiracism. But unlike most Democrats, Mehdi Hasan isn't going to bite on that one. It's like, yeah, it was baseless. He isn't going to be like, what do you mean by that? He's not going to walk into that one. And then he has to brush it off like a joke because these people don't believe anything except for their own power and, ability to fuck children.
I don't know how loyal Bill Clinton on the list. I mean, you were chief of staff at the time. You didn't come out and correct him, so maybe you do share that insane view.
Not my job.
That literally is your job as chief of staff.
No.
Look at the fucking former chief of staff trying to dodge accountability like this. And he's saying, like, not my job. And you know what? A lot of liberal news outlets wouldn't have even pushed this hard. But, Mehdi Hasan knows to keep pushing, he's literally written a book about this, how to like win every single argument, assuming that you have a good repertoire of facts on your side.
Just said earlier, as the chief of staff controls information coming to Donald Trump. Who told him that Bill Clinton killed him?
It's not the job of the chief of staff to protect, to correct the president of the United States. And it's between who knows.
I mean, it is actually the job of the chief of staff to do that if the president gets something wrong.
It's the job of the chief of staff. You know a lot about a lot. You don't know a lot about.
But you just told me the definition was to protect Donald Trump. So you failed.
The job of the president of the United States is to make sure he gets good information.
And he failed because someone told him that Bill Clinton killed Jeffrey Epstein, and you didn't protect him from that.
Did they tell him?
Yeah, he retweeted a post saying that Bill Clinton could have killed him.
So again,
I mean, you're saying you didn't see any of the video stuff. You weren't involved.
See, this is a great example. Like, look how much this guy squirms under pressure. It's not that hard to put Republicans under pressure like this, to put fascists particularly under pressure like this. Democrats just don't do it, right? That's the only reason they can get away with any of this shit. I'm telling you, these people fucking suck when they're put on defense. I think I know where I gotta go for the last one. Yeah. It's like, why are you questioning me like this? You're not supposed to do that. Yeah, it is really like a you're not supposed to do that moment. A lot of the squirming comes from the fact that the like fascists get caught so completely flat-footed because because of their ideology basically being the logical extension of like, we have institutional state power, fuck you. All the other institutions that have to kiss the ring of the state will kiss their ring. You know, fascists are so used to the ring being kissed that they like, their entire ideology revolves around that, you know? They are, in a way, just worse liberals, you know? And so they actually, in the same way that liberals squirm on any news interview when you ask them about Gaza, a la Alyssa Slotkin on, you know, Breaking Points, I think it was. Shout outs to Crystal Sager for that. You know, fascists will squirm when you ask them literally anything because they don't believe anything. They're not like, not even half as competent as the liberals, and saying that liberals are competent is still a stretch. It is so easy to make fascists act like this because, yeah, you know, when you're so used to every news outlet sucking your balls constantly, it's gonna catch you flat-footed when somebody who hates you as much as you hate them is willing to like put some heat on you. And that actually has real consequences. When it's a public figure like this, that actually does have very, very real consequences for like the conservative movement and for you know, organizations that are connected to individuals like this, you know, because there's a perceived damage of reputation. It's a lot of it is like castle intrigue in a certain way as well. But it's like you lose cool points, you lose aura points when you flounder this bad in a debate. And so that's the way that you like, that's the way that you gain ground politically against fascists, is you subject them to humiliation rituals. It's basically like it's kind of like a show trial, but instead of them, you know, being put to death at the end of it for heinous crimes against humanity, you're like explaining to them why they're wrong, stupid, dumb, a liar, and also a loser, and hates everybody, and nobody should ever trust you, you know, in front of a room full of people. And in front of like cameras that will broadcast it to TV, where other people that like care about the reputation of this person will be watching, you know? Like, you're getting put in the highlight reel is what's happening. And the reason that this works with people like Mick Mulvaney and it doesn't on a setting like Jubilee is because, like, on Jubilee, you're dealing exclusively with lolcows from the right wing. Their whole career is being put in the highlight reel, you know? Like, that's how they gain their reputation, because they don't care. But when you have somebody in a traditional space like this, somebody that repped, you know, the president's staff, you know, who was chief of staff for Trump and who was like chair of the CFPB, they like them being subject to this humiliation ritual actually does make them lose points. When they get put in the highlight reel, everybody over at the fucking, like, I don't know, Cato Institute, whatever the fuck organization, you know, maybe the Heritage Foundation or like the Federalist Society or something, is gonna be like, no, how could they do that to my guy, bro? He looks so awful in that situation. Fucking how could they do this to my man? You know? And everybody dogs on them for it. Does that make sense? Yeah, look how offended he is that somebody asked him a real question.
This doesn't rise to the level of chief of staff or the White House, and yet you're confidently saying that Elon Musk is wrong and his name's not in the files.
No, I didn't. No, I absolutely did. In fact, I think if you go back and look at the tape, I said, I imagine that Donald Trump's name is in the file someplace. There's photographs of them together. So if there's a file someplace, which I assume there is.
Trump says his name is not in anything. So he's lying.
I could imagine. Why? There'd be photographs of him.
But he said it's not him.
I have no idea. I have to imagine his name is on the list.
See, look, this is, again, Mehdi Hasan's doing great, because the way that you push is you repeatedly subject them to an impossible contradiction that they can't avoid, right? Like, oh, yeah, here's this contrary information to what Trump has said, and then you basically, like, he's put him in a position where the only correct answer that he can give is that Trump is lying. But that leads to him getting torn to shreds by the Republican Party and the base, because this guy, having some institutional credibility, would have to basically admit, yeah, Trump is lying and we're just covering for him because we don't believe anything. That's the only thing that he can say that isn't him, like, waffling like this.
But he said it's not him. I file someplace, which I assume there is.
Trump says his name is not in anything.
Trump says his name is not in anything, and Mick Mulvaney copped earlier to saying, at the very least, I imagine his name's in there somewhere. There's photos of them together. See, because we've established, and Mick Mulvaney knows that if he tries to blatantly make that shit up, he actually can't get away with it, because Mehdi Hasan will be like, here, bring up the projector. Here's this big giant photograph of Trump and Epstein. In trying to do damage control for the amount of humiliation that he's going to be subject to for any given exchange, by like admitting to some mutually agreed upon truth of the world. For example, there's a photo of Trump and Epstein standing next to each other and the two were best of friends. He has to admit to that much. Otherwise, Mehdi Hasan's literally going to pull the receipts up on him in this moment in front of thousands of people. He just opens the door to other paths of humiliation, because now, because he's in the Republican Party, he's a party insider and has to defend Trump. As per, again, his own admission as his job of as chief of staff, he's now caught between, do I humiliate myself in front of Mehdi Hasan, or do I invoke the wrath of the Republican base and the Republican Party, basically? The only two things he can say in this moment, right?
Why there'd be photographs of him? But he said it's not him. I have no idea. I have to imagine his name.
So when Mehdi Hasan says, like, so is Trump lying when he says he's not in the files? The only two things he can say here are, yes, Trump is lying, or no, he's not lying. He's not in the files. But they've already agreed that he's in the files. He can only say, yeah, Trump's lying here. He can't say he's wrong.
His name is on the list someplace. He was a member at Mar-a-Lago. By the way, Trump...
And all this happened, like...
for being too weird. True story.
I mean, he also said he's a terrific guy who likes younger women, so...
See, and then, like, the less this seem overly complicated, I don't want to make this more complicated than it is. Mick Mulvaney was basically doing the political equivalent of shitting his pants on stage and trying to defend himself, because Mehdi Hasan pushed. Mehdi Hasan did research beforehand. He has presumably some sheets of facts in front of him. With respect to what kind of person Mick Mulvaney is, and like the position he occupied in the Trump administration, certain things that happened pertaining to the events they're talking about. And with that reference sheet, he's prepared to just be like, okay, here's the rules. I know that reality is on my side of things, so I'm simply going to bring all the fact sheets and not let this guy deviate from the set of facts of the world that we're dealing with. All you have to do is push, and the fucking, your average fascist will be like, he's in the files, but he's not in the files, but actually, there's nothing consequential in there, They fall apart like a fucking cheap piece of furniture from goddamn Temu or something. Like the actual moment pressure gets applied. Yeah, that's like, if right-wingers can get away with it, they would just resort to violence, Which is part of, I think, why Mehdi Hasan didn't feel safe at that event for Jubilee, because those right-wingers were so unscrupulous that these kinds of tactics don't necessarily work on them. They don't care about the humiliation ritual because they make money by being humiliated. That's how they gain power. But once you have institutional, once you are the institution, you have some kind of institutional legitimacy. These kinds of humiliation rituals where you, get put on blast to the world for lying, and you have to sit there and defend yourself, explain how you didn't lie, but you obviously did, that loses you points, if we're describing this in kind of an abstract way. Effectively, Mehdi Hasan brought him up here to bully him, and it fucking worked. Because he's one of them spiffy Republicans that believes that, you know, you got to look good and wear a suit and tie and everything. You got to be grown up as you're killing minorities, you know? There's a P mission up there. So anyways, I just wanted to gush a little bit about how good Mehdi Hasan is at what he does. And how like he is in the same way that Zoran Mamdani is a great blueprint for running a progressive campaign, because he believes the right things and knows how to navigate social media and knows how to he knows how to post basically. Mehdi Hasan is a great blueprint for what a progressive media personality and news anchor and journalist should look like, you know? Because Mehdi Hasan is not an access journalist. As we've seen here, like, you put Mick Mulvaney on CNN, they're exclusively giving him softball questions over there, you know? In fact, for a lot of news outlets, it's like softball questions are so far and away the default that like they can't comprehend not doing that. Like, that's just kind of what journalism has become to them. Is there a road over there? There is. I'm gonna go over there. Now, I will move on to the next thing. Next React segment. Told you, React Andes were going to be eating good. This is going to be the most brain rot of them all, but we'll get a nice palate cleanser at the end with a Mr. Beat video. And I think Mr. Beat is a teacher. I love teachers. But first, brain rot. Yeah, that's right. I'm doing some fucking React content to a goddamn TikTok video of Minecraft parkour with the fucking AI Peter Griffin and I think Stewie as well. Yep. Talking about real estate and shit. Apparently this pertains to the mass shooting in New York City, I want to say. Where a I actually don't know that many details of this. Please fill me in if I'm wrong about something. Please give me some additional details where I may fall short. But I think it was like a cop or something shot 4 people, one of whom was the CEO of Blackstone, which is a real estate conglomerate. Blackstone and when I say real estate conglomerate, I mean one of those like private equity firms whose business is purely buying up all of the housing stock in an area and then like sitting on it. You know, these are the kind of companies that like don't think twice about evicting single moms who are like on food stamps, and will also like will never like respond to any complaints about anything from tenants. Let's get to the goal here and then I'll start. We'll get some more details in the video, but yeah. This is going to, again, might be the most brain-rotted thing I will ever watch, but here goes.
A billionaire CEO is dead. 4 people shot inside Blackstone's HQ. And the media's talking about the NFL? Nah, you ain't crazy. They're covering it up. Because when the internet laughed, memed it, and called it Luigi, they realized this wasn't just tragedy, it was a fucking signal. A message from the broke, from the ignored, from the generation that's done watching billionaires die of old age.
This is kind of cringe and LARPy, but there's an underlying truth to this, that the reason the news media doesn't talk about, like, the reason the news media doesn't talk about shit like this anymore, where like, is because they tried it with Brian Johnson, the CEO, former CEO, El Bozo, that Luigi allegedly killed. And Luigi became a folk hero, and so the news media being part of the capital class, or at least their owners being part of the capital class, and then being very heavily bought into the access journalism, where they need to be pretty cozy with the capital class, they naturally don't want to do anything that threatens that position because it's a beneficial arrangement for them. So they, you know, in this instance, that means like not talking about how like this person was a CEO, because they know that like they need to sort of sympathy farm in order to avoid this blowing up into a whole ass incident, if that makes sense. I mean, again, it's like the basic thing that AI Peter Griffin or whatever the fuck is saying is correct, that like they really don't want to talk about how like you know, CEO down or some shit.
So why aren't they saying her name?
Because if they tell the truth that Wesley LePatner was a high-ranking, high-profile real estate exec, they got to admit something.
Executive,
way bigger,
okay, not
that
CEO
this system
necessarily.
made people numb. That Wall Street deaths don't hit like they used to. That we're not sad anymore. We're just watching the scoreboard. So let's break down why they're barely saying.
I think that's actually a really good analysis. That like the, you know, Wall Street deaths don't hit like they used to, and people are just watching the scoreboard. You know, they like the objective here, to the extent that they could spin it at all, they kind of like, news media wants to make that into like a tragedy where, you know, again, they're sympathy farming, but they can't do that. So they'd rather just not talk about it at all, because like when they sympathy farm, it tends to have the opposite effect. You know, people I think people in news media took note of how quickly people were radicalized against United Health and in favor of Luigi, and that spilled over to like news coverage of Brian Johnson being killed, you know? Pretty entertaining to listen to. It's a little bit uncanny because like the accent for the AI is like not thick enough to fully be Peter Griffin, but whatever. Look, like I said, this is the most brain-rotted shit I'm ever gonna watch.
Saying her name, and when they do, it's like Blackstone employee, respected mom, tragic loss, cool.
Yeah.
But who was she?
She was the fastest kicking CEO of Bright.
Exactly. Not some.
They censor the word fucking, which is really funny. And because it's an AI, it just pronounces it says the word asterisk because that's the character they use. Again, brain rot.
Middle manager, not someone grabbing a coffee in the lobby. She ran a $53 billion real estate trust. That's not an employee. That's a power broker. So why downplay it? Because if people knew what Bright really does, they'd stop calling it a tragedy and start calling it blowback. Bright Blackstone Real Estate Income Trust was founded in 2017.
Yeah.
They've spent the last 8 years swallowing the housing market like a fast-risk kicking void. We're talking $105 billion worth of homes ripped off the market, bought in bulk with cash, no negotiation. You try to put in a mortgage offer, they outbid you in seconds. You're not competing against families anymore. You're competing against Wall Street with a war chest, and they don't sell.
This is why like the housing market in America is so fucked. That part, it kind of went by fast, but that is so important to realize about like why the housing market is so fucked and why no new housing gets built. If new housing gets built, then the like, you know, especially if it's like affordable housing or dedicated at least some percentage to affordable housing, then private equity firms don't own it right away. And the profitability of housing is enhanced when there is a scarcity of it. This is all because of like the reason that companies are like gobbling up, you know, real estate and housing is to create scarcity, because housing previously was not a scarce resource. There was no housing crisis before housing was subjected to market pressures, because if somebody needed a house, okay, the community would just build a house for them. There you go, problem solved. And this was like a constant thing, to the extent that like towns and cities grew, housing was built as needed, right? Because like, of course, you know, you couldn't rightly have a city if everybody didn't have a house there. That's not to say there wasn't homelessness in feudal Europe. There absolutely was. But there were, like, things did not operate on the same market logic that housing now operates on, which is why the problem never got this bad before the days of like free market capitalism, because when you have a market with market pressures and the incentive to make as much profit as possible, you start doing things that are directly contradictory to the needs of people in a town or a city, which means that like you hang on to housing, make sure no more of it gets built, make sure it's incredibly difficult to build any of it, and that way the price can just go up and up and up and up, because housing is an inelastic resource. You need it or you die from exposure to the elements, you know? And that, you know, that makes portfolio go up, that makes number go up, and that's really good for shareholders, you know? So they buy these houses and they never sell them, because that way, you know, the scarcity, the availability of housing decreases, scarcity increases, and so the price of housing increases, because there's a bunch of vacant units that are owned but not being used. And, you know, people have a much harder time getting access to housing. And in that way, houses are unrealized gains for like private equity firms, right? Which means that they just continually appreciate in value. This is what like makes rich people so rich with their stock portfolio and stuff. This is wealth being measured as abstract control over resources rather than just purely in money. Each house that they own, because there's no more housing being built, and because like, you know, they're not selling, each house just gets more and more and more valuable, because it represents a part of like an ever shrinking supply comparatively, because like you know, I need to go over this way. In fact, this happens even with abandoned buildings. This is why, you know, in the US, a lot of times you'll see like big box stores are kind of going out of business these days. And what's happening now is that instead of like the lots being redeveloped for something else, it'd be incredibly easy to take like one of these abandoned Walmart parking lots and turn it into affordable housing. The reason that doesn't happen is because you also like companies also benefit from unrealized losses. If a loss is unrealized, that means they don't have to like put it on a balance sheet. That it doesn't actually have to be reflected in how much wealth they have or control. We're just kind of circling around here. Yeah, I'm not going to find anything new here, I think.
They don't flip them, they don't resell, they hoard the homes and turn every single one into permanent rental inventory. So now, that house...
Oh yeah, that's true. Some of them, in addition to just sitting on them, they also turn them into rentals. Most of them short-term rentals, in fact. You know, Airbnb, the rates for Airbnb are much higher than like an apartment that you would rent by the month, you know? Because Airbnb is being rented more like it's a hotel rather than an apartment. So, you know, that's another way for companies to get income off of this, is that you can rent out these houses and these apartments to tenants rather than like selling them or putting them on the housing market in that kind of way. Because if you do that, then you kind of lose control over that asset, at least in some respect, right? There's another discussion to be had where if you're a homeowner, no, you're fucking not, because you have to pay a mortgage, and that's just rent again. Nah, I can't go around there.
You dreamed of buying, you're paying double to rent it from a private equity firm.
And guess who sets the rent price?
Great? Yeah. And in some cities, they're the only landlord. They've achieved monopoly control.
Was it, Bright. Was it BlackRock, Blackstone, whatever? That's the price, Bright.
Yeah. And in some cities, they're the only landlord. They've achieved...
Yeah, this process has been going on for long enough that there are legitimate housing monopolies now. RealPage is a notable one. That's actually something I'll get to in a second. But, you know, a number of private equity firms basically have uncontested control over, like, their fiefdom, the town that they primarily operate in, which means they can charge whatever rate they want. You know?
Achieved monopoly control, especially in the Sun Belt.
Just get a loan to make a factory. Yeah, good fucking luck.
Atlanta, Charlotte, Phoenix, Tampa, whole zip codes are now
They say Sun Belt. I know it as the Bible Belt, but same thing.
owned by 1F asterisk Cricking Hedge Fund.
So what happens when you control all the rentals? You raise the rent, and there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
Bingo. You're not renting from a landlord anymore. You're renting from a fasterish kicking algorithm. Why they can't say her name. So now you see why they can't focus on who died. Because if they say high-ranking Blackstone exec gunned down, CEO of firm driving unaffordable housing, they open Pandora's box. Because people aren't dumb anymore.
Yeah, here's the thing, right? I again, this kind of LARPy that people aren't dumb anymore. People are still pretty dumb, which is why if they obscure it just a little bit, you can kind of get away with that shit. But it is true that, like, if you mention that this person was an executive of a real estate firm, it is unavoidable that you're now, like, trying to square away the issue of, like, housing being driven to absolutely insane heights of unaffordability because of the practices of this company. It's like the relationship of this person, the relationship of a real estate executive to the problem that real estate firms create is so direct that even a dumb person, like your average American, is going to see it. Because guess what? The average American is also a renter, you know? They're lying to try to start revolution. This is kind of like online left shit. So far, it's like, it's not super egregious. It's just a little LARPy at points. What they're saying mostly is correct. And I actually think that there's value to videos like these because, like, if Peter Griffin is telling you about, like, if you read Das Kapital, but only do so in the form of, like, consuming TikTok, content of, like, AI Peter Griffin and Stewie telling you about the contradictions inherent to capitalist political economy and like how enabling infinite accumulation by way of profiteering and exploiting a powerless class of workers is, like, not good for society, and that leads to, like, everything being worse for everybody. Like, if that's how people learn about this shit, then so be it, right? I'd rather they know about it than not, you know? Probably need to go this way. Yeah.
They feel it when their rent hits $2,400 for a two-bedroom.
Yeah.
They know they're being outbid by something robotic. They realize the dream of owning a home is dead and someone killed it. And that someone worked in that building.
So they just say employee and move on.
Yeah, like she was stocking shelves, not architecting the financial structure that's...
Kind of do like the AI voices that copy people. Yeah, the one thing that I actually do kind of like about the AI voices is when you use it to, like, imitate another person's voice or a character or something, because you still have to, like, it's still generative AI and I hate it, but if it's a voice that exists in, like, the public domain in some capacity, it still requires a lot of talent and skill for you to write something for the AI voice to say, right? You know? That's why those videos with like AI Joe Biden and Barack Obama are funny, because somebody still had to write that. Somebody, like, they didn't go to ChatGPT to fucking write the script, or maybe they did, in which case the video would probably be ass. You write the script of like, hey, wouldn't it be really fucking funny if Joe Biden and Donald Trump and Barack Obama were all playing Team Fortress and like shooting the shit, and they were all like really mad at each other all the time, you know? The fun factor comes from the fact that, like, if you've written a convincing Joe Biden or a convincing Donald Trump, and the voice is just the icing on the cake, you know? This is a little bit less like that, because it's like, I guess I could imagine Peter Griffin just deadpan talking about this, because sometimes there's moments like that in Family Guy, but whatever.
They minimize her role to protect the illusion, because the moment you connect her name to the rent you pay, people stop scrolling and start looking for blood.
That is true. As much as there might be some LARPy sentiment behind that, that's what kind of what I was saying earlier, is that like the fundamental reason for this is just that the connection between that person, the real estate executive, and the amount of rent that you pay each month is so unavoidable that literally anybody would see it. And when that happens, yeah, people start looking for blood. We remember the reaction to Luigi Mangione. Right? Here, let me hide this for the time being. Alright. Helicopter time. Oh, okay. Sometimes the inconsistency is the funny part. I don't know. I don't think I agree. There can be funny inconsistencies, but I think the funny part is that, like, if you've written like a convincing version of the character, right? Like if you can get the AI Joe Biden voice to say something that, like, oh wow, yeah, haha, Joe Biden probably would be like this in this not that stupid. Okay, yeah. Anyway. Going here, I guess? I don't know. Man, where is this last Toadette costume? Okay. Oh, there's a... Alright. But yeah, by and large, that I think the... it's probably even from the news... the perspective of, like, kiss-ass access journalists and shit, it's probably a pretty smart decision to just not talk about the associations between, like... to not talk about how, like, oh yeah, a real estate executive was gunned down, because, like, they kind of realize that people are out for blood right now. You know? Oh, P mission. Why would you ask that? That's fucked up. I mean, like, probably, if it's, like, part of his body or whatever. Or part of her body. That's fucked up. That'd be like asking, like, what if you just tore the Leku off of a Twi'lek's head or a Togruta's head, you know, like from Star Wars? It's like, what the fuck? Cleared a mission. Oh, it's that mask from fucking Mario 2. The Doki Doki Panic Mario 2. Not Lost Levels. Oh shit. That Moai face got somewhere to be, dude. I find that addition really funny. The fucking Moai head that will run. Like, actually run. Despite not having legs, it'll make the arm motions of, like, running. Whoever was on, like, the design team, they were cooking with that one. Oh, it's Yoshi place over there. Ah, dang. Is there another Yoshi place here? Maybe one up here or something? Maybe not. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention in relation to that extremely brain-rotted video. So I subscribe to a couple of newsletters, one of them being Ken Klippenstein. Thank you, very cool. Everybody should subscribe to that man's newsletter. The grind never stops. Another one being to the Lever Weekly, and I saw something that actually was germane to that discussion about real estate. So one of the news stories that they included in the email they sent me was, here, look, rent now, pay later. Property management software giant RealPage is expanding its rent-setting business to include rent collection, raising antitrust alarm bells. So basically, like, RealPage is not only setting your rent, but collecting your rent as well. Like, they are both the company that, like, says you have to pay us this much, and also sends somebody to break your kneecaps when you don't pay up. RealPage recently announced it required Livable, a payments processing firm, to handle collections and expand on its flexible rent offerings, which allow tenants to take out a loan with fees and pay their rent in weekly installments rather than a single sum. I fucking hate the debt economy. Jesus. This is just going to be the new normal, isn't it? Where the debt economy is so bad, you're going to have to take on more debt just to pay down debt that you have. And like, it's just going to keep being like this, isn't it? You have to take out a loan to pay your rent. You have to pay your rent in incremental installments, by the way, with interest. Like, now your rent is going to fucking accrue interest. Now your pizza is going to accrue interest. On top of the shit that already accrued interest, like your fucking car. Yeah, they legitimately, they just want there to be no escape from financial hell. Essentially buy now, pay later for rent. RealPage is already facing a lawsuit from the Justice Department for allegedly building a landlord monopoly and algorithmically driving up rents. If I recall correctly, that lawsuit was started during the Biden administration. I don't expect Trump's administration to, like, take it anywhere. You know? Because Trump is a real estate guy. This is exactly the kind of capital that he is, like, specifically fond of. That lawsuit is not going anywhere. And if it did, I would actually be very confused that the Trump administration allowed a real estate firm to be punished for literally anything. Now let's take a look at Mr. Beat, I guess. I don't know if Mr. Beat is in, like, the content ID system, if my stream's just gonna get nuked for watching this, but Somebody suggested it on Discord, so sure, I guess. I don't know. Mr. Beat. The truth about Christian nationalism. Let's see what this video is about. I wonder. This guy is a, I think, oh. Hello, Mr. Beat. Let's bring back this window here. Alt, drag that down. I wonder if this is going to be like a Knowing Better video where he's going to tell me some shit about the history of Christian nationalism in America. That's going to be like, oh shit, that's kind of weird. I didn't know that. Liberals still in their corner wondering how did we lose? Yeah, true. So, Christian nationalism, the Nazism of our time. I wonder what Mr. Beat is going to teach us about it.
I'm Mr. Beat. I'm here in Stanton.
By the way, I know this could be content stealing. I think people should watch Mr. Beat. He's cool, or something. He is cool.
Virginia, a lovely little city in the Shenandoah.
Wait, where?
I'm American.
Oh yeah, he's in Stanton.
I'm
here.
Mr. Beat. I'm here in Stanton, Virginia, a lovely little city in the Shenandoah Valley.
I've actually been to Stanton. It's kind of nice, although it's been a little while. It looks like the part that he's in is actually decently walkable, which is cool. See, like you can see there's some downtown like mixed use buildings here.
But like most American towns, no matter where you go, you see churches like this one everywhere. And this one. And this one. Or this one. You get the idea.
Yeah, and it's actually... I know that the plot twist is probably going to be, yeah, these are Christian nationalist hellholes now. But there is an odd charm to some of the older American towns that have like these downtown areas. That there are so many churches, not because of like the churches themselves, right? I hate religion. But rather because they're like historical buildings. Like some of these churches are clearly older. You know? See, like look at these churches, right? You can kind of see this is from an older era of American construction. Look, these buildings are connected. It's made out of like a relatively sturdy material. If I look up what a box church looks like, here, box church. Images. Where, no, hold on. This isn't exactly what I'm, here. American box church. American mega church? That's the inside. I'm looking for the outside. There are some churches in America that just kind of look like a box. These are like the super duper cults. I don't know if I'll be able to find a picture of what I'm looking for. American church. Not like this. Even this has more character than what I'm thinking of. And not even this. Right? Because these are a little bit smaller. I'm kind of thinking about like things that look like a mega church but smaller. I see these all the time. I can't find an image of it on Google Images, but whenever we visit family, whenever, you know, or some shit like that, I see these all the time. This might be the closest that I could find to one. Just like a really unremarkable looking building that just kind of has a cross slapped on it. You know? A lot of churches in America look like that. Or like this. I don't know. You guys feel me? You see what I'm saying? I think this is the best example, right? Look at it. This is the kind of thing that my dad refers to it as such, and I think a lot of other Americans do as well. Maybe it's a Southern thing, I don't know. We call these like box churches because it's basically just a box. You know, it's a building that's just kind of shaped like a box. There's nothing really special about it. And they slap a cross on it. They give off creepy vibes. They do. They are kind of creepy. They're like in the middle of nowhere. And then like you these are the kind of things that I typically associate with like Christian nationalism and shit. Like these are the kind of churches where that stuff happens. You know, they're aspirational mega churches. They're aspiring to the fucking gaudy excess and open disdain for humanity that mega churches have to offer. But then these churches actually have some character because they're part of an integrated community. And that's not to say that all of them aren't like Christian nationalist pieces of shit churches. But the building itself, I think, looks nice.
Everywhere. And this one. And this one. Or this one.
That's a lot of churches.
You get the idea. There are approximately 370,000 churches in the United States, and of these, around 332,000 are Christian churches. Oh, you want a percentage? 90% of
Thank you, Mr. Beat.
American religious buildings are Christian, which is no surprise because, yeah, the biggest religion in the United States is Christianity. The religion based on the teachings of Jesus Christ.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
that's
B.
the church now, probably. It is. Thank you for doing that. Perfect timing.
This is a cute feature of some American towns. You hear the church bells a lot. It's also something that you notice a lot when you go to majority Muslim countries, particularly ones with very old communities. When I went to Morocco, there were mosques everywhere, and you heard the call to prayer. You know, they're the equivalent of the church bells, because that's like, hey, it's time for church. And then, you know, in Morocco, I would hear a guy going, Allahu Akbar. It'd be way, way the fuck longer than that, but like, you'd hear that 5 times a day. And so I think you hear these church bells a number of times a day. I don't think I've ever seen the other type of religious building with my own eyes. They're all pretty similar. I mean, there are some interesting differences architecturally, but similar function. They like basically in Morocco, like you can imagine the kinds of churches you would see in an older, like old-timey American town that isn't just car hellscape. The way that churches are positioned and the kind of the geography of them, the construction even, is kind of similar to mosques in like Morocco, or I imagine Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, you know, any one of those places. Again, it's like an old community with an old community center, or a number of old community centers. You know? Let's do the Bumble vehicle. That is an insane amount of joystick drift. I hit right 3 times and it went left 3 times. Oopa.
You don't have to keep going. It's also the biggest religion in the world, but focus here, brother. In this video, we're talking...
I don't think that's actually true. Hold on. How many Christians worldwide? According to Pew Research, Christians made up 2.38 billion of the worldwide population of about 8 billion. Okay. Represents nearly 1/3 of the world's population, the largest religion in the world. 3. Okay, never mind. Maybe I'm wrong. I was thinking that Islam had more like adherents globally. Estimated population of almost 2 billion followers. Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
There are some students in school talking...
What is happening? Fucking other tab activated. Whatever. Sometimes I think to myself, does anyone even go to these church buildings? These ones, yes. Here, okay, this is really important to talk about, because I have family that actually go to church habitually. People do go to these church buildings. These church buildings like this are integral for various community functions beyond just church services. That lady sounded so AI. I think it was an AI voice. I usually, if there's a like video that I watch that has like the AI voice narration, sometimes I'll just mute it and like read the whatever comic like the video is summarizing or some shit. Yeah, people do go to these churches. You know, because they're kind of like organically located meeting spots in a city. You know, people like, especially in a city like Stanton where a lot of older people live, you know, they will go to the church for church, but then they'll also go for other stuff that like happens outside of like, you know, whatever goes on Sundays, right? These churches have that. The box churches don't. At least not nearly as much.
Like this one everywhere. And this one. And this one. Or this one.
Oh, I rewinded a bunch. Rewound a bunch.
And they're Christian.
Let's go back here.
United States. What about this thing called Christian nationalism? What about it?
I would say this. I know this can be offensive to some people. I believe our nation was founded upon Christian principles and founded upon the Word. I mean, you can look at the Bible and you can find, okay, it was primarily our founding fathers were believers in the Lord Jesus Christ.
You can transform the culture and change its direction just as much as Hollywood has already changed the direction of our Christian nation.
This is a nation that was founded on Judeo-Christian ethics.
They always say Judeo-Christian, but they don't include Jews as part of the equation for their religious state. Well, except for the fact that they want to put all the Jews in the box that is Israel and then have God come down and slaughter them all so the Christians can go to heaven. That is what Christian nationalists actually believe. Wish I could snap my fingers and make religion disappear from entire history. Man, wouldn't that be nice? Also, I think some of the founding fathers were like aggressive secularists. Not all of them, and there's some truth to saying like, the founding fathers actually wanted a Christian nation or whatever. You know, there's a lot of discrimination famously against Catholics in the early days of America, and for a while afterwards. Not saying some of the Catholic religious structures didn't deserve the shade that they got. They probably did, but you know. Average Irish experience in America is you just get called a Catholic whore or something. I don't know. Hot take, the founding fathers weren't unified. That's just objectively true. There was a lot of ideological infighting within the founding fathers and like a lot of ideological disagreement. They eventually consolidated into the innermost circle of like the property owners and stuff like that, which were the sort of... that was sort of where we get modern liberalism from, at least in this country. But no, there were religious fundamentalists in the cadre of like constitutional framers that were kicked out. There were socialists in the cadre of constitutional framers that were kicked out, you know, of the Cool Kids Club. And the people that got to stay were the wealthy property owners that nominally wanted a like secular state. And you know, the whole "in God we trust" stuff is because like, well, you know, we want people of all religions to worship freely, and they just kind of assume like, you know, every religion's got a God, right? Like that's how it works.
Above my courtroom it read, "In God we trust."
That
Pre-watched.
we actually go back to our...
When I was in school, people talked about the founding fathers like it was a religious story. That's because it is a religious story. It is a religious narrative weaved around a group of people that, by some sort of divine right, established a nation state. So, but the religion that the United States was founded on was not necessarily Christianity. In fact, the United States was uniquely capitalist insofar as its founding origins, right? Once the revolution neared its end, right? When the founding fathers had been more or less successful in purging opposition from the revolutionary ranks, from like the socialists, from the workers' associations, from the like the abolitionists or whatever that enlisted for national independence because they thought that could advance their cause. They actually like their priority was basically like, we should get to keep our portfolios, you know?
Christian roots, and we go back to where we once were. It's America's best hope for revival.
So while the media is going to lie about you and label Christian nationalism, and they're probably going to call it domestic terrorism.
Bro, they want to be victims so bad. It's actually crazy how horny they get for the possibility that they might get to be like victims.
Well, yeah, it's been brought up a lot lately. So I guess I ought to explain it since I like to explain stuff. So
I love when Mr.
My name
Beast,
is David Congdon.
Mr. Beat.
I'm an editor at the University.
I love when Mr. Beat explains things. It's one of my favorite things on YouTube.
University Press of Kansas.
I actually don't watch Mr. Beat that much, but I do think he's cool and funny.
But I'm also a theologian and scholar of religion and politics.
Oh yeah, David's gonna help me explain it too. We'll explain what it is, where it came from, and why so many gosh darn people keep talking about it lately.
Oops.
Did you know that your personal data is sold online by data brokers?
That's kind of how the modern economy works.
Christian nationalism is the belief that the American nation is defined by Christianity. But I'll let David break it down even more.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that kind of like, even as a basic explanation, I don't know if I agree with that, but let's just let the other guy say his piece.
David.
I would define Christian nationalism as an ideology that fuses American political identity with Christian identity. There are two major versions of Christian nationalism. One group says that America was originally a Christian nation and it needs to be recovered. That identity as a Christian nation has to be restored. The other one says that America was never a Christian nation. And so it has to be reconstituted today to fulfill its true identity as a Christian nation.
Basically.
Really? I actually haven't heard that second one before. I don't think I've ever heard specifically the Christian nationalists that say America was not a Christian nation at its founding, but it should be. Probably because it's just like, for them, it's just that much more convenient to like lie. You know? How are you supposed to do
Some
that?
Christian nationalists believe the United States was founded as a Christian nation.
Folks, we were founded.
That's what the overwhelming majority of them go with now. I feel like that other strain of Christian nationalism might be like a little bit older and like not as common.
As a Christian nation. Right. You can't erase that from our history. People try, but they can't do it. Right.
Or that it should have a Christian form of government.
America should be a Christian nation.
And not just any form of Christianity. Usually a very specific kind of fundamentalist Protestantism.
Dang.
Protestantism. Christian nationalism says American laws, institutions, and
oh yeah, another thing that's very interesting about Christian nationalism is they kind of bring back the anti-Catholic racism that was very prevalent in America up to and including the 20th century. You know? Legit, there was actually like a lot of anti-Catholic sentiment in America among like Protestants and stuff, particularly like newer Protestant churches or whatever. They just kind of went along with the professional haters, right? And they're kind of bringing that back, especially because we have the woke Pope 2.0.
Even identity should reflect Christian beliefs, often through government action.
Oklahoma State Superintendent Ryan Walters says schools need to go further
He has ordered all schools to incorporate the Bible and 10 Commandments into curriculum for grades
Definitely
5 through
not
12.
like indoctrination
And
at
now he says
all.
he's
Smiley
purchased
face.
500 Bibles. The elected Republican's ultimate goal: put one in every
Oh,
Oklahoma classroom.
Yeah.
This is the this guy. Yeah, that's the guy that got trouble for having porn on like the smart TV in like the conference room or something.
That kind of stuff. I don't know how far back we want to go. Maybe we want to go all the way back, but the historical roots of Christian nationalism.
I would go pretty far back. I go back at least to the Reformation. So the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, early 16th century, I think really set the path to Christian nationalism. Effectively what that did was it created a conflict between Catholics, Lutherans, and the Calvinists.
No.
And they all began to fight with each other to see who was going to control the territory of the Holy Roman Empire. The principle was established later
Yeah,
in the
this was the
century
religious
that
war of
whoever
Europe.
ruled a particular region, they got to pick the religion of that region. And we see effectively the origins of the nation state in that division of the empire up into these different units that are defined by a religious identity. And that's effectively where we see Christian nationalism in action. And a lot of today's Christian nationalists long for those days where you had a ruler who could say, we're Christian nation, you all are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it is just, it's a pretty straightforward yearning for, like, the remarriage or whatever of church and state, so that church power and state power can basically be one and the same. And like, so that there can be, in academic terms, there can be one unified patriarchy ruled by patriarchs, priests, nation state governors, etc. Where basically the women all have to be barefooted in the kitchen and like minorities don't have rights and shit, Depending on your Christian nationalist flavor, like which flavor of Christian nationalism you want, they may highlight Catholics to varying degrees in this process.
Be Christian because I'm Christian. That sort of homogeneity of the country, of the nation.
Basically, these guys are all imagining that they are playing EU4 and can hit the fucking, like, convert religion, convert culture button to create, like, the based and trad Holy Roman Empire 2 full of, like, Anglo-Christoids or something.
It's not too far-fetched because you look at the Islamic world, there's plenty of theocracies.
Absolutely, and that's precisely what they would want on the Christian side in many ways.
The idea that the United States has a...
That's true. They point... It's like... sometimes people are overly theatrical about that. But yeah, Christian nationalists in America are virtually identical ideologically to Islamists in Muslim countries, and even towards the ruling ideology, in some sense, in some ways, in most Muslim countries, because a lot of Muslim countries do have state religion. There is not freedom of worship. There's varying degrees of freedom of worship for Jews and Christians, because they're like also people of the book or something like that. But you are not allowed to be anything else. Dang, I messed up.
Special relationship with Christianity goes way
Basically, Christian nationalists fucking love Sharia law.
back. In fact, many of the early colonists came to North America
Oh,
to
yeah, the
set up
Puritans.
their own Christian society based on their own interpretation of the Bible, the holy book of Christianity.
The Puritan colonizers established theocracies. Those early colonies were theocracies in their view. Rhode Island is really unique in being one that was open to any religious belief. It was truly secular in that sense. But otherwise, there was a strong theocratic idea among those early colonies.
In colonial
No.
America, religion and government were like
I don't even know if
butter
you're
and jelly.
supposed to.
If
How you're
jelly
supposed to do that.
could, throw you in prison for not going to church. Most of the 13
Oh yeah, that's
years
true.
we
That's
saw-
what that is in fact what a religious state would entail. You didn't go to church this Sunday. You didn't chant loud enough during the reifying your faith or whatever the fuck. Sorry, you're going into jail forever, and you will be forgotten by society. And also, your family will be sold into debt slavery or something. Wait, what? Are we supposed to ride that plane?
Colonies had official Protestant Christian churches. In most of them, you had to pass a religious test and declare a religious faith, usually Protestant Christianity, of course, in order to hold public office or even vote. Here in Virginia, the Church of England was the established church. Even members of other Protestant denominations, like Baptists and Presbyterians, faced discrimination and persecution. But not everyone here in Virginia liked the idea of government and religion mixing. Famously, future Declaration of Independence writer and President Thomas Jefferson called for the separation of church and state and the establishment of religious freedom for all citizens. He'd create a bill, which eventually James Madison helped get passed.
I almost guarantee that's not how you're supposed to do that part in Mario Kart, but yeah, Protestants are fucking insane. This when people talk about religious freedom and stuff, it's kind of interestingly enough, I think it speaks to the success of states being made secular institutions, that this doesn't really happen anymore, or that it's like so foreign to people as a concept. There used to literally be like religion tests. Like if you weren't the right religion, you weren't allowed to like run for a public office. These are like such low-hanging fruits that for the longest time, Republicans use them as easy gotcha like talking points when people to justify like invading countries in the Islamic world. Look how barbaric they are. They don't let people of other religions, by which they meant Christians because they only cared about Christians, like run for public office or you know, vote in civil society or anything like that. They don't let them have rights. You know, it's just so, it just, to us, it seems so, such a no-brainer, such an after-the-fact kind of thing that, like, oh yeah, of course, you have rights regardless of, like, what religion you are, you know? And the perennial mission of the right wing is to reverse that, to make it so you, in fact, do not have rights if you are not specifically of the kind of religion that they want, which is to say being, like, pro-rape, usually. Sometimes that isn't even enough.
In 1786, that did just that. It made the Church of England no longer the established church in Virginia and guaranteed religious freedom to all Virginians, even non-Christians like Muslims, Jews, and Hindus. That bill, called the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, was big time influential on the First Amendment. Flash forward to 1787.
Yeah, the First Amendment, funnily enough, you can kind of tell by the way that the press was treated in America and the way that, like, political demonstration was treated. First and foremost, the First Amendment had religion in mind, right? Because there were actually, in early America, there was actually quite a bit of crackdown on the free press, you know, and other expressions of political speech. But consistently, the First Amendment was about, like, religion, ensuring there weren't, like, basically, if people remember learning about poll tests from the Jim Crow era, that, but for religious beliefs. Like, if you weren't, you know, check this box if you are the right kind of Christian or something like that. Do the secret Protestant handshake. You had to know the right secret Protestant handshake, and then you were allowed to vote. But if you didn't know the handshake, you couldn't vote. Or do anything, really.
You remember 1787, don't you?
What?
Wait, you don't?
That's crazy.
You don't? That's when the Founding Father dudes got together to create a new constitution. In fact, the Constitution that so many Americans love and cherish today. Most of those men were...
I actually don't fuck the Constitution, but my reasons for saying fuck the Constitution is it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't guarantee freedoms for enough people. And also it's way too vulnerable for the good things that it unabashedly does. contain and advocate for. It's too vulnerable to those being rolled back, and it's a dead document that is impossible to change for the better, but is all too easy to change for the worse and erode over time, as we've seen with the Supreme Court, etc., etc. Thank you. Basically, I think we need a new, like, constitution, a la... There was a country that, like, attempted to draft a new constitution and unfortunately wasn't successful. They had some, like, really, really good shit in the draft. I believe it was either Peru or Chile. But yeah, basically we need that, but we need it to be successful or something.
In fact, Christians. Some of those men
Yeah,
were
most of them were.
devout Christians who often quoted the Bible, but the most influential men there had absolutely no interest in making the United States a theocracy, or a type of government in which religious leaders rule based on their religious beliefs and values.
Yeah, see, I think this even speaks to my argument about how America is kind of, like, uniquely capitalist in its founding. At least insofar as the founding fathers, those that survived the ideological purges, because, like, their concern about their own, like, commercial interests was singular. They didn't really care about anything else. Sure, you can be Muslim, you can be Hindu, whatever, as long as you are not opposed to our commercial interests or something like that. As long as the spice can flow, you can be whatever religion you want. And by spice flowing, I mean the spice flowing into our pockets, where we get to, like, you know, make big money and have a plantation with 8 octillion slaves or something.
Benjamin Franklin strongly opposed using the government to prop up religion, as did George Washington, who once said, quote, "Every man ought to be protected in worshiping the deity according to the dictates of his own conscience." Heck, even James Madison, the freaking father of the Constitution, talked trash about the government favoring or establishing a single religion. Quote, "Who does not see that the same authority which can establish Christianity in exclusion of all other religions may establish with the same ease any particular sect of Christians in exclusion of all other sects?" And I couldn't find any evidence.
Yeah, see, that's actually an interesting thing to note as well, is that a lot of the religious freedoms granted in the United States, obviously there was consideration for Muslims, Hindus, Jews at the time. Thomas Jefferson was famously, like, reverse anti-Semitic, which is really funny. Where he was like, no, the Jews are actually better than everybody else, or something like that. And that's good, actually. A lot of the concern over religious persecution in America, a lot of the whole, like, you can worship whatever god you want, was just, like, slightly different versions of the same god. It was mostly for, like, different versions of Protestant Christianity that were all, like, constantly feuding with each other. In the colonial ages of America, over, like, who got to have rights in their little shit-ass colonial town, and who got to participate in, like, the killing of the natives or something, you know? Like, that was most of the freedom of religion shit. In like, the majority of the concern for free religion was motivated by that, because that presented such a clear issue in a majority Christian colonial project, but that was experiencing a lot of religious infighting at the same time. But they explicitly also said, no, if you're Hindu or Muslim, that's also fine. You know? Because I know that some people will, like, I have heard the argument that, like, yeah, well, they only wanted religious freedom for Christians being used as a defense for Christian nationalism and shit like that. Which is demonstrably not the case. And it wouldn't matter even if it was, because, like, why the fuck are we, like, God, fascism is such a cringe-ass ideology. They fucking hinge every single belief they, at the surface level, claim to adhere to on people who've been dead for hundreds of years. You know, rather than, like, I believe this good thing because it's good. and I don't have to like historically justify that from like, I don't know, some great man theory shit. I guess it is just because they're all hopped up on great man theory.
Evidence that any of the other founding father dudes tried to change their minds. Everyone at the Constitutional Convention was pretty much on the same page regarding mixing Christianity with the government. None of them tried to establish the United States as an explicitly Christian nation, bro. Like, not even a little bit. And if you look at the Constitution...
Yeah, they specifically did not want that because it was not good for their commercial interests.
It's an entirely secular document. Oh, secular just means not religious. Not once does it mention God, Jesus, or Christianity. And when it does bring up religion, it's like, bruh, leave religion out of this. Article 6, Clause 3 of the Constitution says, quote, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States.
Yep.
And then later, for good measure, the Founding Father dudes added the beloved First Amendment, which says, quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an
Yeah, the religious, famously, the religious freedom, it, like, exists even outside of the, well, I guess not famously, but, like, religious freedom exists even outside of the First Amendment, because remember, the amendments were added as concessions to various, like, militant, community groups that wanted some protections for them, for themselves or whatever. Basically, there was a threat of rebellion even immediately after the, American Independence War. You know, if the founding fathers were just like meet the new boss, literally the exact same as the old boss, right? So they had to basically be like, okay, fine, you guys get to enjoy some of these freedoms too. You know? And that's where we get the Bill of Rights and various constitutional amendments. In fact, I think that's basically where all the constitutional amendments come from. Is the fear that things might spiral if, like, people are denied certain rights for too long.
Establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So basically, the Constitution says that the federal government can't create a national religion or interfere with religious practice.
Yeah.
It's not actually in the Constitution explicitly that there's this wall of separation of church and state.
The wall of separation is an idea that, especially from Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, who was a strong proponent of separating church and state.
And actually, I think he literally said that line too, right?
Yes, he did, yes. John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, they were very strong proponents of a society that was not based on any religious affiliation or identity, because they were all very concerned about the way Europe had created tests for blasphemy and heresy. For them, the wars of religion that I was talking about regarding in the Reformation era with the Catholics and Lutherans and Calvinists all fighting with each other, they thought that was the problem. Their vision of America.
This was, again, you know, a lot of this had to do with their commercial interests, but there was also an interest in nation building here. You know, these two things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Basically, it was like, wow, Europe fucking descended into generational warfare over which version of exactly the same God and Savior figure people worshipped. You know, so we don't want that happening here. And it happened to, it was basically, it was like the most convenient 1-2 punch that they could do this thing that, like, made some people pretty happy and guaranteed their commercial interests at the same time. Because if society is stable, then, you know, the spice can flow. And at the time, that was like one of the axes along which society had most recently grown really unstable.
Was a society that didn't have those religious divisions and religious violence.
By the way, I was right. Jefferson did coin the phrase wall of separation between church and state with his letter to the Danbury Baptist Association. Okay, so the Constitution was a secular document, but that didn't mean the United States wasn't dominated by Christianity culturally. So, Christian nationalism.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
On the other side, in the early years of the country, where are we seeing that?
We're seeing that happen, especially...
Like, any, you know, the right-wingers that will invoke this as an argument, it's like pure cope, right? Because the the majority culture of a country is inevitably going to, well, have an effect on the culture of that country, right? It's kind of tautological. Obviously, if a country is majority something, that's going to be reflected in the makeup of the country, you know? For a long time, America was actually majority English and Scottish, you know, like Germans and Dutch and French were minorities. So for a long time, America reflected what society looked like, at least to a certain degree, in England, and still does to an extent, because that's kind of like a socio-cultural root there. But now it's a lot more cosmopolitan, and the culture and the style and the cuisine of America actually reflects that. You know, so obviously the same thing is going to apply to religion. America is majority Christian, was majority Christian for its entire history, and so cultural norms and practices are going to be in some way reflective of that. That doesn't mean that is the only acceptable way. That doesn't mean that's the only acceptable way to behave. It just has an influence on how things look and how things are, right? What we've also seen is that increasingly, as society grows more secular and more atheist, that is also being reflected in popular culture, in social norms changing and things like that. More honest than when they try to adopt their kids? What? I'm not sure I understand the what you're saying there.
In the South, in particular, views there about
indoctrinate.
Anglican and other Christian identities there connected to their Southern identity. Southern Presbyterians and others are very strongly Christian nationalists in a way that's more prominent than in the North, which leads into the Civil War divisions there.
The term Christian nationalism has only been around for about 20 years, but that didn't mean it didn't exist in the 1800s.
It's all the way through. Christian nationalism means different things in different times, can be wedded to different political views at different points. It's anachronistic. Obviously, none of them called themselves Christian nationalists at that time. But in retrospect, we might see that there's a version of Christian nationalism there. There was a big move for about 100 years to create a Christian amendment to the Constitution. This lasted from the mid-19th century to the mid-20th century. And there was a campaign to add an amendment to the Constitution certifying that the United States is a Christian nation. And it failed, and it fizzled out by the time that Eisenhower became president. Yeah. But that was a big movement for a long time.
You said it fizzled out when Eisenhower became president.
One of the first things Eisenhower does when he becomes president is get baptized. He's the first president to ever be baptized while president. Office. Yes. Yeah. So that's a big show of Christianity, of Christian nationalism, we might say now. But then that's what we see In God We Trust, the Pledge of Allegiance. We see the National Prayer Breakfast get started then.
Yeah, the Pledge of Allegiance includes a line where, like, you acknowledge the supremacy of God or something like that. Is some bizarre shit. I think I've talked about the Pledge of Allegiance before, but yeah.
As well. So a lot of these public displays of Christianity become prominent with the Eisenhower presidency. And at that point, there's a shift. It used to be that it was common knowledge that the Constitution was a godless secular document. At that point, the idea that the Constitution is actually a divinely ordained, truly Christian document becomes more widespread.
Yep.
Really?
During the Second Red Scare, a period of hysteria and paranoia over the perceived...
Yeah, the Second Red Scare is the one with McCarthy. There was an initial Red Scare when the Russian Revolution was happening in 1917, and shortly after it succeeded in 1918 and 19. You know, basically, like, kind of in the interwar period, there was a brief first Red Scare. In fact, that kind of led to FDR. Some of the leftovers of that led to Roosevelt and his administration. Because of, like, the perceived threat that socialism posed, and like basically having to do social democracy in order to combat it. I just figured I'd talk about that, like, a little bit. And also it bears mentioning that Joe McCarthy was a Nazi, like, Nazi sympathizer, actually liked Hitler.
threat of the Soviet Union and communism in general, the federal government began to more openly embrace Christian symbols as a way to counter
Not
the Soviet
surprised?
Union's
Yeah.
attack on not just Christianity, but religion in general. In 1954, Congress added "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance. In 1956, it made "In God We Trust" the official national motto. It was basically just an easy way to contrast with the godless communists in the Soviet Union. Jump ahead to the 1970s, and a new movement began.
Very nice. Literally undercutting fucking Constitution to own the commies or something.
That mixed Christianity and politics. The Moral Majority, led by folks like the influential
The Moral Majority, this is like the beginning of like modern Christian conservative politics. There's always been Christian conservatism and whatever, but the Moral Majority was like in the like they're saying here in the mid 20th century when the sort of TV preachers really started to take over. You know, and that's kind of the movement that became the Christian nationalist today, and why it seems that Christianity has such an almost universally right-wing bend to it nowadays in the United States. Why, like, all of the political presence that you see from Christians and, you know, people who invoke their Christian identity, it's almost ubiquitously a right-wing thing. It sounds fascist. It is fascist. It was first and foremost, it was anti-integration and anti-gay rights. Like it was a response to a lot of the civil rights advances that were being made in the 60s and 70s by you know, civil rights groups that supported rights for black people, that supported rights for queer people, etc. You know?
Baptist minister Jerry Falwell, it played a pretty
Oh
important
boy,
role
Jerry
in
Falwell.
mobilizing conservative Christians as a political force. This is when you got a big push to get Christian prayer back in public schools, for example. By the way, the Supreme Court had already ruled
That one was also unsuccessful, thankfully. Don't know how long it's going to be unsuccessful for, given this fucking Supreme Court. Yeah.
that prayer in public schools was already unconstitutional in the case Engel v. Vitale, which I made a video about. I think. That was a long time ago. Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. Oh yeah, there it is. Hi.
I see.
Cases like Abington School District v. Shemp and Lemon v.
He's good.
Kirkman also further built up separation of church and state,
Yeah.
and the moral majority.
Yeah, it's one of those. I think the separation of church and state is something that I think is so ubiquitous. It can only be assailed in a political climate that is kind of reminiscent of the one we have now, where the adherence to a objective and shared reality is so far out the window on the part of the right wing that they're just willing to admit that they hate the Constitution and would rather America be a Christian nationalist shithole with Sharia law as the law of the land. You know?
Was at least partially a reaction to those decisions. Your top 3 most influential.
Yeah, the right wants to kill their opponents. The left wants to send their opponents to a re-education camp, or more realistically, to school and tell them to fucking pay attention in class, right? Like, you know, that's the difference here.
Christian nationalists in American history.
This is tough, but my top 3, I think, in terms of influence. This is, I mean, I go by influence more than by public
feel like
knowledge.
Falwell has to be on that
First
list.
one would be John Winthrop. So he's the person who
Winthrop.
preaches the City on the
Interesting.
Hill sermon. He wasn't influential in his time, but he became influential in the 19th century when the City on the Hill sermon became circulated more widely as part of his
Interesting.
campaign to spread this idea about America. It doesn't really happen until the 20th century, effectively. My second person may be unknown to a lot of people, but I think is maybe the most important. That is Robert Louis Dabney. Dabney
Damn it.
was a Southern theologian and professor. He was a Confederate chaplain. He
I
wrote
see.
many of the core ideas that became prominent later on with religious right. For instance, he had a piece against secular public education and in favor of
Of course.
homeschooling.
Oh, pro homeschooling and anti-public education. It's almost like everything I've been saying about the right wing and how they want to control children, and they fucking hate when people are intelligent and capable of, like, you know, not immediately succumbing to patriarchy and authoritarian control. Damn, that's crazy. There is some, like, limited degree of education, quote unquote, learning that happens in the home, just because, like, kids spend a lot of time there and they're like, what's this? And their parents are like, that's a lamp. And they're like, and they, like, learn how a lamp works, right? But education in a social and public setting where they can meet other kids of different backgrounds, other people of different backgrounds, and where they can basically learn that they live in a world with other people and learn how to interact with those people, how to, you know, make friends and stuff like that, and how to analyze information and take in information and like, I don't know, learn some basic intellectual skills that are very important to being a well-functioning member of society. Conservatives hate that. Because conservatives are not well-adjusted members of society that have, like, intellectual skills, you know?
His writings, he has this idea, this line, this is almost verbatim, but when something is non-Christian, it's actually anti-Christian. So Dabney's important.
Interesting.
And the third person I'm going to pick, there's a lot of more recent figures. You can talk about Falwell or Rushdoony or others.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about C. Peter Wagner. Peter Wagner is not a household name, but what he did was he brought together the charismatic Pentecostal side of Christianity to be a force for Christian nationalism. His ideas and his teachings and his network eventually produced what we now call the New Apostolic Reformation, and that is a global network of millions and millions of.
But yeah, to respond to that message, the only purpose of homeschooling is to eliminate the social aspect of education. The reason that school exists is to educate people in a meaningful social and spiritual sense. And I don't mean spiritual like religious. I mean spiritual as in a cultivation of the human spirit and the will to do things and be interested in things, right? You know, the capability to join in the joy of your fellow man and share their struggle and whatever. To be a social actor, right? And homeschooling, the appeal of homeschooling is that you get to directly drip feed your child the fucking indoctrination slop and prevent them from learning that, like, you know, gay people are in fact normal and don't have, like, forked tongues or something. Doesn't Christianity say if you're not with me, you're my enemy? Something like that. Yeah. There's a lot of contradictory shit in the three Abrahamic religions. Like, a lot of shit. Most of it revolving around all these people are your neighbors, but also, you know, smite all the non-believers, they will burn in hell for eternity. You know?
The people. It's maybe the largest faction of Christianity today, growing in size. And that's where we get a lot of these charismatic Pentecostal prosperity preachers and teachers, especially on YouTube and other influencers.
Interesting.
So today,
Charlie Kirk
what
in
do
the
Christian
top right.
nationalists
Thank you.
typically believe?
I didn't know that the majority of those, like, mega churches and like prosperity gospel people were Pentecostals. I didn't know that. Obviously not all of them, but, you know, I would have assumed, like, Baptist or I guess they mentioned Presbyterian earlier, Southern Presbyterian. Technically, they didn't learn anything socially in school, sadly, and that's another success of right-wing policymaking, is that the right wing actually has opposed for all time, has opposed social education in school with things like social sciences, art, whatever. They all, like, at the core of it, their critique is that these things are womanly. And they want kids to be learning STEM and like math and science and stuff like that. Things that you can still, like, basically as a wedge, you can limit the education of children to things that do not teach them social skills or that do not require social skills for you to learn at a basic level, right? That way, kids can be kept vulnerable to indoctrination and control and, you know, molestation by your average, you know, conservative pastor.
If you already know the answer to this question, you should still watch anyway and see if I agree with you.
Damn,
because
that's crazy.
You could be wrong. I could be wrong too. Sources, as always, in the description. They believe the United States is or ought to be a Christian nation. They do not like the separation of church and state. They
So far,
believe
so
the
good, yes.
Bible should inform American laws and public policy. They
That
want
is true.
prayer, the Ten
I do believe
Commandments,
that.
and heck, even crosses in public schools. And some
They want
even
that
want
too.
Christianity declared as the official religion of the country. Most
They also want that.
also are against pluralism, or the
Yes.
idea that people of different religious beliefs and social groups can live in the same society.
We can't defeat Christian nationalism, and we can't oppose Christian nationalism by trying to emphasize the First Amendment. The most important way to address Christian nationalism is to reaffirm and find new ways to support democratic ideals and a pluralistic vision of society. Pluralism is really the enemy of Christian nationalism, not church and state separation.
Yeah, that is actually true. That is interesting that that he brings that up. I would love to see that elaborated upon, but I guess there's not much time left in the video. Christian nationalism is kind of like it is the mainstream version of like an ethno-state movement in the United States, because the United States, even among people of the same religion, has been like multi-ethnic for a long time. These sort of like a lot of the neo-Nazi skinheads were kind of relegated to that cultural image, where the Christian nationalists had more success flourishing, because nominally they could theoretically tolerate you if you were the same religion as them, but were also black. Does that make sense? You know how like America is way too multi-ethnic to have any kind of successful movement for an ethno-state, the likes of which you would see in a European country. Like, think about Balkan politics, right? That kind of shit doesn't really work in the United States, even for people that really, really want that. And there are a lot of people that want that. And by a lot, I mean like 10 to 20% of Americans. So instead, they code it in something that is more like compatible with a sort of ethno-state project, which is religion, you know? If that makes sense. So a lot of Christian nationalists aren't like, they like the Sharia law because it is a tool to like crack down on racial minorities, basically, if that makes sense. That's kind of the political character of that nationalism, is that at its core it's actually quite similar to the race-based nationalisms of old. You just have to go through an extra step of like Christianity or something in order to get there. Oh, that's all the Wario costumes. Nice.
I'm hoping by this point in the video you understand why Christian nationalism scares a lot of Americans. Most Americans don't want a theocracy. Most Americans love pluralism. Christian nationalism goes against the Constitution, which...
And increasingly, a lot of Americans aren't Christian. You know, the late 20th and early 21st century has seen a broad-scale secularization of the Western world. That may change with a more and more pronounced social and societal decline, with people kind of retreating into irrational frameworks of belief, deferring to religious principles and to God figures and to superstition like that. You know, we've seen this in other eras of history where the religious prophesizing basically like hits an all-time high when society is collapsing. People try to find refuge in the supernatural. You know, that could very well happen, but right now, you know, people are increasingly secular minded, or like up until now, people have been increasingly secular minded and like less religious in a like actual superstitious belief kind of sense. You know? Does that make sense? And that's that's why like a lot of people don't like Christian nationalism. You know, that's why it's so polarizing, because it is a form of extremism.
Secular document, and by linking Americanness to just one religion, it marginalizes all other people who are not Christian. Remember how at the beginning of the video I said that Christianity was the biggest religion in the United States? Please tell me you remember that. Well, 4 out of 10 Americans are not Christian. More and more churches like these have been losing membership. This likely explains why Christian nationalists have been pretty loud lately. Simply put, they are afraid of losing their influence.
I don't know if that's necessarily it. Hats off to me having 1K channel points. Nice, welcome back. Or, oh, 90K? Sick. I don't know if it's necessarily true that, like, they're afraid of losing their influence. I don't think it's so nakedly self-interested as that. A lot of Christian nationalists... I just finished up a lot of React content. 1v3. I think it's more so, like... Yeah, Gotron. I think it's just the isolation... that has come as a product of the late 20th century, early 21st century, is like driving people to really dark places. And for the Christian nationalist bloc, what I'm thinking here is that basically all of them are such antisocial losers, which you kind of have to be to be this kind of nationalist. It kind of necessarily entails that they just hate everybody and want an ideology that maximizes the degree of hierarchy and suffering that people they do not view as themselves suffer, right? That's kind of the genesis of modern Christian nationalism. You know, I don't think it's them like fearing losing their power the way a politician would. I think it's more just, I want my, like, fellow man to experience suffering. I think it really is that simple. Yeah, like, a lot of them, like, these fuckers don't even go to church. Like, he was claiming, this is, I think this might be another thing that doesn't quite sit well with me with that little bit of analysis. This is a really good video for the history of Christian nationalism, obviously, is that a lot of these Christian nationalist motherfuckers don't go to church, you know? Like, if you've ever been, like, think of the kind of churches that we're talking about, too. With these older churches that are, even if in a very backwards and kind of in hierarchical way, they are pro-social. These are social environments where you fraternize and like, engage with other people in the community. All types of different people that may live in the community. And these are churches in the city, right? These are not, like, podunk-ass rural box churches, right? The rural box churches are the real, like, hub of this Christian nationalism. I don't think it's as likely that it's going to be one of these. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know the political character of Stanton that well. But you see what I'm saying? That, like, this kind of Christian flavored nationalism is an amalgam of antisocial tendencies. So it's more likely that you get a lot of Christian nationalists if they go to church at all, that go to a church like this rather than a church that looks like this. You know? Or here, let's find a different example. Let's find another church that looks really nice. What was it? It was that, like... Yeah, look at this one. This church that's, like, you know, connected to these other buildings, part of this quaint little downtown area. It's, you know, nice and walkable. Very pro-social environment. Reactionary tendencies are way less likely to develop here than, like, this. And like I said, most of these Christian nationalists, none of them fucking go to church. You know? Hell, from what I've seen, I actually live next to a church that's maybe a little bit more... It looks kind of like this, but it's a little bit more like the kinds of people you would see going to one of these. What a lot of these churches will do is they'll just rent out the space. You know? Because they're like community hubs. Right? I don't know. Good video. Christian nationalism. Cringe as always. They hate you. They want you to have no rights. They love Sharia law. Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. I'm going to raid somebody. Sadness? Yeah, sorry. Animated movie day. Oh boy. Efaby's doing a watch party? That's fun. I might not stay for long because I have, like, there was one other thing I wanted to do today. And there was, like, the movie I have in mind that I want to watch is not the same movie that she's watching, so see you guys later.